We will discuss existential hope, which means both very positive, ambitious futures, potential risk along the way, and then also how do we get there? What are new institutions, funding mechanisms, and so forth that we need? So this is going to be a really like grandiose vision, tying all the tracks together and looking a bit further out. So I want to kick us off with a quote. Do you mind closing the door? Thank you. With a quote from Marshall Savage from the Millennium Project, long time ago. But he said, "Teetering out here in the fulcrum of destiny stands our own bemused species. The future hinges on what we do next. If we take up the sacred fire and stride forth into space as the torchbearers of life, this universe will be a burning, a whole frozen universe with thaw and transmogrify, from howling desolation to blossoming paradise." Could have also fitted for the space panel. There are also other existential hope visions out in other areas. But this is, I think, just a good, quick segue into thinking boldly and positively about the future while not forgetting about the risks and while trying to think about best ways to make it happen. Also in the back, if you want to move to the front, there's like front row seating available, you guys. Okay, so maybe we'll start off with you, Danielle. Oh, I should introduce you guys. So first and foremost, Danielle was already here last year, also from 15-17, and I'm so impressed by what you guys are doing. You really, I think, putting your money where your mouth is, and funding like absolutely rebellious geniuses that are like, too young to believe, almost. It's really quite inspiring, I think. And then we have Christine here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm hoping to hear much more about your work. It's the first time we actually meet in person, so thank you so much for coming. Patrick, I just saw you at the Falling Wall Summit in Berlin. You're from Sprint, and I think you're also, really like a limelight in Europe of really like trying to spread and accelerate innovation again. So thanks a lot for all the work that you're doing. And Beatrice from Foresight, who is running our Existential Hope program, so you can say a lot to that as well. So maybe we start with you, Danielle. Can you give us a little bit of an outlook of like, what is a positive vision that you think we could be striving for? It can be technology specific to one of our tracks, or it can be totally something entirely different. Last year, you came up with this beautiful, educational paradigm where people can actually learn and flourish from an early age on. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I don't think it's on. Let's see.
You can use this one.
That one. Thank you, Allison. Yes, flourishing is very important. Technology and change is very important, but my particular lens on it tends to start with who is doing the work. And so one of my hopes for the future would be that we get much younger people involved in very big game-changing projects much sooner. Last year, I gave a talk here about innovation and young people, and basically getting young people out of, if they want, we're all about choice, but getting them out of tracked institutions that may be slowing progress down. I can't remember the name of the economist right now, but there was an economist who did a study about the rate of progress based on when graduate studies essentially started for people, and it turns out that rate of first innovation used to be around 23 years old, and then the person's biggest, most well-known invention maybe came at 30. These timelines are pushing out by 10 years right now. And the second one, in some cases, is not always happening just because we have, actually, it seems some of our health span is coming a little bit backwards right now. But it doesn't look like it's getting better. So my hope for the future would be that, we start taking younger people seriously insofar as maybe even 14, 15, 16-year-olds being at the cutting edge. We've been meeting with a lot of them, and I have a lot of hope and future thinking around that in short order they will be able to make a difference in technological progress and the economy before they're even legal to do so.
Sure. Thanks. Well, that resonates a lot, I guess, with mine, which would probably be along the lines of inclusion. So young people, but not just young people. I think we have to, when we think about, a positive vision of the future, we should really be thinking about all the voices, whose voices are part of those decision-making processes, who is influencing us, and how are we actually including people from different backgrounds with different ways of knowing, with different values and priorities. So I think from that lens, youth are definitely in that group, but maybe even broader than that around the globe. Am I passing it on?
Hi, everybody. So I'm with the German Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation, and we're the home for radical ideas. And it's really an opportunity to empower those that we normally sort of ostracize or find laughable because they have crazy ideas, have a home to come to. And the philosophy around that is, up until now, it's always been some kind of imminent danger that has driven technology and innovation. Whereas normally we stay complacent and don't push the envelope, the limits of where we want to go. And we as an organization want to flip that around and say, even during peace times when we are not driven by existential destruction, there are people who have fantastic ideas, and we want to empower them to do radically different things. And so that is what we're trying to accomplish.
And yeah, I'm with Foresight working on our X-Hope stuff. So I think that one of the things that I find very interesting about people working on existential risk is that a lot of them are from like the transhumanist community originally, like Nick Bostrom or Anders over there. And I think that they are excited about preserving and saving the future because they're so excited about like what it could become, like how amazing it could be. Yeah, Anders is always talking about grand futures, so yeah. And I think that that's what we're trying to do, like instill some hope or like some hype for the future, kind of. And that's like what it's gonna take to be able to want to save it, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need a bit more X-Hope, I think, in our daily lives too. Yeah, I really want to dive a bit deeper. Could you share a bit, like, especially like what Sprint, for example, is focusing on, or who are a few like exemplary figures that you funded, and I would love to also know from you, who specifically do you think is missing right now from this conversation? So let's dive deeper into a few of the bits that you mentioned.
Yeah, so we're a really interesting beast in that is we're a company that is wholly owned by the German government, and we have a lot of flexibility where we can run ARPA-like programs, competitions. So we just launched one on biomanufacturing to build what I lovingly call the Star Trek replicator version 0.1 to demonstrate that that will work. On the other hand, we invest in individual companies, and if we like what they're doing but there's no market for it, we actually create subsidiaries of ourselves and give them that bubble where we invest anywhere from 20 to 100 million euros over 5 years to allow them to mature and then demonstrate that that technology will actually work and people will want that technology in the future. And we have 13 companies now that run everything from sort of maybe less exciting things as building a 1,000-foot or 300-meter high wind tower to show that you can produce continuous wind over a city if you would build these towers, to using DNA origami to make molecular machines and, for example, replace vaccines through these DNA cages that you just inhale, and it protects you from different types of viruses. And so these people are not, talking about interdisciplinary, are not your virologists, they're not your normal engineers, they're people who have dreamt up these ideas, have built some really cool concepts, but never get that platform because most of the people said, well, you're not an engineer or you're not a virologist, you have no idea what you're talking about, and then they get laughed off stage. And those are the people that we're empowering.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we're very similar. At 15, 17, we have a young man who legally changed his name to Anthony Stark. This tells you what his type of vision is like. He is the founder of Stark Therapeutics, and he's working on a cure for diabetes. Solo founder, no degree. Sometimes what we say about the people we work with is we don't know if they're crazy or crazy awesome. And we hope that it often flips to the second side, but we love them all equally. And he's making fantastic progress on it. And when we first met Anthony, I mean, we even thought, oh my gosh, can we put capital behind someone who, on the surface, looks pretty unbelievable? But we have backed his team now with over $1 million, and they're making fantastic progress on what they're doing. And what we would like to be able to do with our fund is be able to fund people to the point where they have indisputable proof so that when they go out to larger institutions, they cannot be ignored. So that's an example of someone like that.
Wonderful. Love it. If you want to give an example of a voice that you think should be more excluded, just to actually get concrete on it.
Yeah, well, I guess, we're talking about hope. So it makes me think of an anecdote maybe that I can share with you. So I work at UNESCO. We do many activities, but one of the things that we try and do is work with people to help them think about the future of any topic. And so one workshop that we did was with what we call an equity-deserving community in Calgary. So it was people of color, Indigenous, women, etc. And we're talking about the future of trust. Because the reason why we organized this workshop was because they didn't have trust in their government. They felt that the policies were not reflecting what their priorities were, et cetera. And as soon as we started running the workshop, a few of them said, well, stop right there. I don't want to think about the future. Thinking about the future is a privilege that I don't have. So much to say, because I'll try and keep it brief. They went through the workshop, which is, a structured way of thinking about the future in a step-by-step way. By the end, their kind of realization was, if I don't think about the future, someone else will write it or think about it for me.
It's usually what happens, yeah.
And so I think a lot of voices are missing, but there's just one example of, one community in Calgary whose priorities weren't reflected.
Wow, cool. Well, I think I love what you mentioned about like the general innovation ecosystem, and I would love to discuss a little bit more. Like, we've heard throughout the tracks today individual problems that like bubble up in each field. Like we've had data on the biotech and longevity problem, on the biotech and longevity panel. We've had like just like funding always comes up, right? Making sustainable funding available for people, not just like a one-off grant that is like too small to even like redirect researchers into. And so there's a lot of these like societal bottlenecks, and I know we're going to drill into them much more tomorrow. But I think if you were thinking about like innovation or like existential hope futures at large, like where do you see like the current really biggest choke points? That are really hitting people, perhaps like across the space.
I guess agreeing on stuff, or like finding something common sort of ground to get excited about, I think, is one of the things that I'm thinking about. And I think that we're gonna do more world building stuff now, because hopefully that will be able to like generate more concrete ideas, and also having like a broad set of participants to do that, so it's not just like one very sort of simple-minded version of the world that we would like to see. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, and it relies a bit on the notion of, also obviously from Eric Drexler and Mark Miller, on the Pareto-topian goal alignment, like basically set like a really good, nice future to achieve out front. Maybe that will create a little bit more cooperative or Pareto preferred interactions, rather than like only looking at the things that you want to avoid. And I think world building can be done, well, and I think can be done or like concrete enough for this to also get across to people.
I'm going to get myself in trouble now.
Good.
So we get too distracted about talking about things like, is this economically feasible? Is there an application for it? How are we inclusive or include diversity? I'm sitting on a stage with amazing, beautiful, and brilliant women here. Because they deserve to be here, right? That's not because they should be here and represent, it's because they deserve to be here. So we get distracted with these kinds of conversations. And the focus should be really on, it doesn't matter if there's an application for it. So I'm a big fan of serendipity. I'll be talking about that a little bit tomorrow in the unconference. I call my team serendipity engineers. If you look back in history, when people said, let's just get something done, we don't know why this is, what the application is, where the market is. The US government took us to the moon. Look at all of the technologies that came out of it, right? That drive us. And I think we need to focus more on that again, and allow the brilliant people and empower those brilliant people and encourage them to say, write your own future, because it's important to be part of that, to get back into the system and actually do so. I think I just turned it off.
Take this with me, it died. Well, I don't have a tech background, but I guess it is similar to, so speaking of innovation in the specific term, but I think what comes to mind for me is mindsets, is just changing mindsets. Because, all of you, we're all exposed to change, et cetera, but I think the general population, at least my experience, is when you're faced with uncertainty, when you're faced with risk, we get scared. And so actually we retract and often want to kind of stay in that comfort zone. But if we can kind of work on changing mindsets to, make it okay to fail, make it okay to experiment and try again, then I think that we can see a lot of change in a positive way.
So I think infrastructure and platform is very important. I think we need more places like fellowships. I talked about this last year too. It was great to come here. I had lots of new ideas. But one of those ideas is about being able to expand on fellowships as a place where people can have long-term thinking and start putting down the seeds of something that they might do over a very long period of time. So I would like to see more philanthropic efforts in that arena to be able to support individuals and organizations to do things that they might not be able to do otherwise. And then from a platform level, I think it would actually be really important to have like a larger marketing effort to be able to showcase these things that come out over time, because there isn't a way to do that right now.
Yeah, it's really tricky. You organized a fantastic fellowship, kind of like organizer summit, and I attended it, and it was basically like lots of different fellowship organizers. So, we have a fellowship, went and just kind of shared learnings across fellowships. And I think it's really interesting for those also to meet. We invited a few of them now to our Vision Weekend in the US, and they'll be coming, I think, finding more avenues for collaboration for just like the few people out there, or the few orgs out there that do that work. I think they need to band together a little bit more and like hold each other by the hand and say we can do this, and actually and actually start building a bit more of a movement. And then what you said about like there's little platforms, we have the problem with the AI safety grant. We get many more applicants that we could possibly fund, and so I talked with a few people about like what do they do if they have that problem, right? Because I think many orgs do. And there's one, for example, that got recommended to me, like I think it's called experiment.com or experiment.org, where people can basically upload specific grant proposals and like other people can take them on. And I think creating more of these kind of like flexible funding structures or more open source funding structures, I think would be useful. It's just like we're so early stage and it's sometimes difficult to make progress in it. Okay, that was my rant about it. But I would love to know also, like, I think oftentimes, when you talk about existential hope and when you talk about making kind of progress towards good futures, I think oftentimes, there's like some general, like, just doomerism and naysaying, I think. But that aside now, there are also some pretty valid concerns of, like, what are you just being Pollyannish, that you like pushing technology progress forward? And I would love to hear from you guys, like, how can we push for a positive future while also kind of like being relatively proactive about the risks? Because I think what you said about if you don't think about it. If we don't think about the risks, others will think about the risks. And I think both on the regulatory side and perhaps on the bad actor side. So how can we kind of find a middle ground of like pushing for optimistic futures while also having kind of like a DTD approach to risk potentially? If you want to start. Or whoever.
You want to step in first? Oh gosh. It's a huge question. We think about this a lot at 15, 17, of that when you put capital into something, you're enabling something to happen. And we don't suppose to have any special knowledge about what we think is going to have a good or, just to polarize it, a good or a bad outcome here. I think in general we try to think about what would be the outcomes, within at least in a minimum of our lifetimes, if not longer. But we don't. There are people who have pitched me on many things that I'll think, I can't get behind that. Like it's a future that's probably coming, and it's not something that I would feel good about putting capital behind, but someone else is going to put capital behind it. But we certainly at least have our own ethics and standards, and also even within our team, just difficult conversations of, is this something that we want to have a future around, and also what are the things that we can imagine would happen, but also what are the things that we can't bear to think about in this arena that are also probably going to come true. So it's huge questions, and we just at least try to have considered conversations about it as a first step. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
Yeah. I think if someone asked me what they could do that would be most impactful, I think I would say work on decreasing existential risk still, because I think that even though I speak a lot about existential hope, and I think that it's super important to have like ideas about what future we want and what we want to aim towards, and a future sort of worth getting excited about. I think that to, well, first off, be like motivated to do that work, you would need the existential risk work, you would need a future worth getting excited about. And then also just like, if we think really long term, I think to a large extent, it's still about keeping like the option space open, because I don't know what like people or aliens or AIs will want a few hundred years or thousands of years from now. So I think, yeah, to a large extent, just like decreasing existential risks, so we're still like around to be able to, yeah, have that future. Yeah, working on keeping the option space open, not having like value lock-in or these sort of things, basically. Yeah.
So I think it's important to always stay engaged and to be able to explore the potential. We will always learn, and we will not always be able to predict what the technology will be able to do and where the outcomes are. So having conversations and learning about it. So my previous job, I worked for the United States Navy, the military, the Office of Naval Research Global, which has been around since 1941 and recruited scientists like myself to travel the globe and find scientists that had interesting ideas. Initially, it was to be someone who prevented technology surprise for the United States, ultimately became to be the partner of choice of scientists all across the globe, to empower them to do research, but at the same time learn about what they're developing, understand what they're developing, and then work with them to figure out, okay, how does this fit into society, and how can this find a mutual benefit? So an organization like that, if you look at all the inventions that they funded, it started with everything from the microwave that was discovered as an accident, all the way to graphene today, right? So you can go back and show that those grants were contributed. And in every case, the scientists came back to our organization over those decades and said, I'd prefer to come to talk to you because we have shared values on how you approach things. We believe in the approach that you take in terms of wanting a society where everybody benefits from that society. And so you're able to have those conversations. And similarly, in our organization, we empower people and we give them a platform to come talk to us. We give them that trust and we build a partnership with them, and then we have those conversations. And along the line, then we discover, be surprised, of course, and then have further conversations as to, okay, what can this technology do? What should it do? And how do we engage globally to make sure that it actually benefits society and doesn't hurt society?
Maybe I'll just add, again, from a social lens, I guess what I would say is the importance of thinking about multiple futures. So obviously we're in this race of trying to get, this new technology and having the best solution to whatever problem we are facing, whether it's a societal one or whatever it may be. But I think we also need to think about like futures that we don't want, probable futures, preferable futures. There's this tool in futures work called the futures cone, where there's even preposterous futures. So probably you guys are a lot in that space in terms of innovation. But we also need to know, what we don't want and also think about it from a systems lens. So not just technology, but the social side, the economic side, the political side, et cetera, to see what impact that might have on whatever solution that we're bringing to the table.
Already went.
All right. Well, I think you just really gave me a great segue into which of the closest memes captures how you'd like the future to look like. I would love to hear from you guys. We have a menu of options. Cypherpunk, solarpunk, space opera, singularity, transhumanism, cosmism, extropianism got so little love, none. Protopia, pareidotopia. Any one of those that appeal to you guys, or anyone that you want to put out on the table here?
Yeah, I already voted for solarpunk.
Space opera.
Cypherpunk.
Solarpunk.
Okay, let's do a quick hand raise here. You can only raise once. Cypherpunk. The meme that you associate with it. I think you know.
Solarpunk is it's like environmentalism plus technology cohabitating together in a positive way.
Okay, solarpunk. Hand raise. Cool. Space opera. Hand raise. Love it. Singularity. Hand raise. Oh, we didn't define if it's positive or negative, did we? Transhumanism. Hand raise. Cosmism. Hand raise. Love it. One. Extropianism. Okay. Protopia, the Kevin Kelly one. Okay, you're kind of getting on board with it. Protopia. I would kind of that too. Okay, cool. We have one of them out already. Are there any questions from the audience? Anything that you want to know? Yes, you've already asked one. Okay, go. Go, Martin.
Yeah, so I actually have a question about risk, and not of the existential kind, but of the more personal kind that was mentioned at the beginning. Because I often feel like that sort of risk is often kind of discussed in very, very broad terms. As I see it, like there are lots of different people that might perceive many, many different risks to themselves or whatever. So I guess my question is just, to have more flourishing futures, who should be taking what risk that they are not currently taking?
Well, speaking of inclusion, I don't think that's for me to answer, but that's actually what we try to, I think it all comes down to empowerment and agency. Like we all have to feel the responsibility and the ownership ourselves. And so actually I would say there's not one single person that needs to take that risk. We all have to take the risk together, thinking about what matters to us. We all have different values. We all come from a different place. We all, have a different entry point into the way in which we see the world. So, I would say, try and each person has to contribute in a certain way. Anyone else?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So one of the most interesting things in my job is I get to travel around the globe and meet new people. And I can appreciate their distinct perspectives and their unique approaches to solving things. And I think that addresses risk from many different perspectives. Because risk is something we need to understand from the certainty and uncertainty part. What we can mitigate and what we have no idea how we're going to be able to mitigate. And you can only do that if you can appreciate the different perspectives and those approaches to solving that issue. So that would be my answer for that.
Cool. I think there's also always the risk of, the deaths you cannot see, like the stuff that we lose or the people that we lose by not doing the innovation that we need. And I think that I would like to, there are a few quantifications of that, like there's a few correlates for longevities out there and so forth, but I think we need more of that that we actually show the cost of not innovating in a positive way. Yeah. Okay, we have one final question and then, yeah. Oh, well, actually, just project.
I guess we're all here in a way because we fundamentally believe in the ability of an individual to envision a future and bring it to life. And it's clear that a lot of people don't believe that. And I wonder what you think could be done both to make that, spread that meme and to make it more true, or if perhaps it's a sort of evolutionary sort of situation where the people who don't believe that maybe aren't going to make it.
That's a great closing question, guys.
That's a tough one. I think the more you're open with society and the more you have positive conversations, the more you're able to show that you build trusted partnerships. Those that are on the outside, the naysayers of that, will lose that conversation very quickly. That's something that we saw. So one of my most exciting trips was to Armenia, where you have the Russians and the Chinese that were constantly there and offering them tens of millions of dollars to do research for them and give them all the research. And they came to me and said, where the hell have you been all this time? We prefer to work with the Americans. And it was because of that trusted partnership and those conversations. We shared the same values, and we were open and had a discourse to talk about all the things that we talked about on this panel. And that ultimately won the conversation. And I think that holds true to be able to open and have that conversation, to be those trusted partners and have those relationships, and then you will succeed over the others.
I was going to add on to that, having scaffolded systems in which people can show and prove their trust that maybe look different than how things have been done before. I've talked to different municipalities about things that we do at 1517. Like we have a grant program where we'll give a young person a $1,000 grant to just get something started and start working on it. And the first question they ask is do you collect receipts, and what's the application process? And the application process is talking to us, and we're extending a small amount of trust, a small amount of money, for what we can do more so, and then extending and scaffolding and saying from there, okay, this person's done a great job with our grant. Let's talk about what we could do to fund them further. And I think there aren't enough programs to be able to extend trust and reputation to people so that they can use that to go out and further and get more trust and more reputation to do things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think what I was talking about earlier, like the world building stuff, I think is one way to just like start generating more concrete ideas. And it's not necessarily that those ideas have to be the ones that become reality. I think like you were talking about space and all the progress that like the space race has brought, even though we're not living on Mars currently, we have all this technology that we're having great use of currently here on Earth. And so I think that, yeah, sort of having a vision to strive for that a lot of people can get behind. I also generally like having, well, like the Pareto-topia or the sort of open-ended, like multifaceted future of, yeah, just the archipelago thing. Yeah, you know it very well. Just a lot of different societies, they can have different values, but still able to like coexist peacefully, so everyone can sort of have their piece of cake.
Yeah, I really recommend you guys reading the Scott Alexander's Archipelago or Atomic Communitarianism. It's basically a utopia of utopias. It's very fun. All right, as we're nearing this, I want to hear final words from you. What do you think is perhaps an area that you think is undervalued or something that you really want to continue discussing with people throughout this weekend? So after this, we're going to do basically like meet your favorite speaker, meet and greet. And so what's one thing that you really want to want others to talk to you about?
I hate going first. Are you ready? All right, you look ready.
So I'm here to hear your crazy ideas, to really think about something that nobody else thinks is possible, and maybe someone can convince me that I should invest in building the space elevator.
Please don't complain to me about the UN system. But I'm happy to talk about the work that we do, the futures kind of methodology that we use. And I'm actually learning a ton from all of you because this is not necessarily my domain. So very happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah, likewise, myself and Michael say that VC is advanced tutoring, but we're getting tutored by people like you all the time instead of us doing tutoring. So we love to talk to people who are very much thinking so much at the frontier of a field that, yeah, you might sound crazy to other people, but we love to hear people out, and especially if you know people who fit our particular dropout thesis where they're not getting a degree and doing something outside the system who maybe isn't here, but you think we could help, would love to hear about them.
And I think I'll just say like existential hope, that I would love to hear what you think we should do more of at Foresight in terms of that. And also, more randomly, animals in the future. Like when will we be able to talk to animals? I would like to know. And yeah, what's the role of animals when we're having like whole brain emulations and these things? I would like to know, please.
Thank you so much for a wonderful first day. Thanks.